Total War Troy has finally gone full fantasy and has added all the mythical monsters, replacing all the half historical, half fantasy units. We're going to take a close-up look at these units and their stats to see what they're all about, although we're not going to go too in-depth as there is a lot to get through. Let us begin with the big three, starting with Triple Doggo. Cerberus, a gargantuan weight class single entity monster. He's very fast at 90 speed and is of course going to be good at putting out the damage. He also has a whole bunch of abilities, including Howl of the Underworld, which reduces nearby enemy morale by 15 for 30 seconds. He also has Summon Shades, where he can summon one of his unique units, the Wretched Shades. And then he has Fires of Legathon, which is kind of a fire damage spell, fire magic-y spell. And then we've got some more of the generic kind of abilities, Siege Attacker, Terror. He's also Unbreakable as well. He's got Flanking Defense improved. So just a big damage dealer beastie. And for the unique Cerberus units, we've got Giant Shades. These are big anti-large damage dealer boys. They're unbreakable, they cause fear, they're immune to flanking, and they've got snazzy snakeskin tights on. And then we've got the Spearmasters of Elysium. These are another big anti-large unit. They're unbreakable, they're unflankable, and they have a big ability that gives them a massive damage boost, but they'll be sent back to the underworld at the end of it. And then there's the Marksmen of Elysium. These are a ranged unit with big range first of all, missile damage which lowers melee attack and morale of their target enemy unit, and they're not too shabby in melee. And lastly for Cerberus, the Wretched Shades, a more lower end spear anti-large unit, but they do have a big old shield and are unbreakable. That brings us to the Hydra, the multi-headed spooky snake. Still a good damage dealer with armor piercing damage and poison on the melee attacks, not to mention a missile attack as well, which has some decent range, is armor piercing and again is poison. He's pretty slow though at only 40 speed. And for his abilities, we've got poison, poison, and more poison. He's got a poison breath attack, a poison bomb. You can kind of imagine what those two attacks are going to be. He also has regeneration, as he has no armor. He's going to need that to keep him alive. He also has the sharpshooter trait, which means any missiles that he fires cannot be blocked by shields. So that's pretty powerful, considering a lot of elite units have big heavy shields to protect themselves. Well, they're going to mean nothing when the Hydra's firing on them. Again, unbreakable, terror, usual stuff. That is the Hydra, all about the poison and got some ranged attacks, but pretty slow when compared to the other two big monsters. And the unique Hydra units are all about, guess what? Poison. First of all, the Hydra Priest, who yes, comes with a tree as part of his look. Only joking, not really, that's just my bad placement, although what the fuck is going on with this weird tree? The Hydra Priest though, not fantastic in melee, but he can do a little bit. He's got some poison on him as well, but he is actually a spellcaster. He can heal friendly units. He does have some damage poison abilities as well. He has regeneration himself and causes Encourage, so a nice hero to buff up the army with. And then we have the Hydra Defenders. These are an anti-large spear unit that do cause poison themselves, and they have regeneration. So yeah, just a fairly tanky anti-large unit, this one with some poison. And then we have Hydra Archers who, well, no prizes, you can probably guess. They cause poison and they have regeneration. That seems to be the gist of most of these units, right? They are a lower end archer unit, this one though, but still regeneration and poison going to help them to be that little bit more effective than most low tier archers. And lastly for the Hydra, the Drinkers of Venom, a low tier melee infantry with some stab and poisony power though, regeneration. They're pretty quick on their feet as well, so good for the flanking, and they are expendable, so won't affect morale. And to the majestic flyer of the bunch, the Griffin Patriarch. Big damage dealer with lots of mobility, more so than anything else in Troy so far. It's a huge damage dealer with a ton of weapon damage, which is armor piercing, lots of melee attack, incredibly fast, unbreakable terror, that stuff. Big charge bonus as well, so going to be good flying in, doing its damage, flying away and cycle charging as much as possible to make use of that big charge bonus, although it's already got tons of melee attack, but why not add more in there? For its abilities, it's got Rallying Screech, which will increase nearby friendly morale and stamina. And then he's got Savage Gust, which is a wind spell, does damage in a cone kind of shape in front of him. When he lands on the ground, he'll get Bronze Feathers, which will increase his missile resistance and armor, but only while he's on the ground. When he's flying, that goes away. And then just more generic stuff. He's Unbreakable, Terror, flanking attacks improved, so he's just going to be like a big flying chariot that's going to be difficult to stop and you can cycle charge with, and he's going to do a whole ton of damage. For the unique units, there's a baby Griffin, the lesser Griffin. Pretty much the same sort of deal, just not quite as strong, although incredibly fast at 125 speed, so this one could be great for harassing those missiles and backline units. Again, it could be useful to cycle charge, but much the same deal as the other Griffin, just not quite so good at the job, and doesn't have as many fancy abilities. And then we have a skirmish cav with the Arimaspoi skirmishers. An anti-large skirmish cav no less. They've got anti-large melee damage, anti-large missile damage, and also armor-piercing missile damage, so a good one for taking on all these new big large monster units that are coming with this DLC. They can fire on the move, fire 360, and get some bonuses when moving over tough terrain, so a nice skirmish unit. Oh, and they have Vanguard deployment. And then we have the Arimaspoi Spearmen. Pretty much your average spear unit, bonus versus large, but they move over rough terrain easier, they have Vanguard deployment, and flanking attacks improved. So a good sneaky unit potentially if you use that Vanguard deployment and then sneak them up behind the enemy with their improved flanking attacks, they could do some nice work to large stuff. And lastly for these special units, the Arimaspoi Hunters. Kinda similar to the previous unit, an anti-large spear unit with a few more tricks up their sleeves. Still got Vanguard deployment, but they have Stalk, which means they won't be seen until they get close. They also have a missile attack, which is only short range as it's kind of a javelin, so it's armor piercing and anti-large. So overall, as you might expect, they are great at hunting all these large units and monsters that we will now have to deal with. So that's all the new unique units coming with the big three monsters, but here's all the reworked monsters, or mythical creatures that were pretty much just men and women in costumes. Now they are actual monsters, and I'm not going to go through all of these visually because a lot of them kind of look the same, like there's like 10 different kinds of centaur. So we'll look at a couple and you'll pretty much get the idea, but I will mouse over all of the units in the custom battle screen at the end of this video, all their abilities and everything, so if you're interested in that, you can see that at the end. But Harpy Fiends bringing flying units to the game now, which is pretty huge. That's going to be incredibly powerful for flanking, getting after backline units like missiles, getting around units easy and flanking them in the back. The Harpy Fiends pretty much just a melee unit, good for the flanking. They do have a missile resistance ability in the air as well, so they don't just get straight up shot down, but there's Harpy Fiends. Onto the Seagulls, I mean the Sirens, they're looking pretty fucking goofy now. I can safely say I prefer them how they looked before, for no real reason. Other than they didn't look like fucking seagulls, probably. But they're pretty much the same unit, pretty rubbish in the melee, do have the ranged attack, and they can make a unit go berserk for 45 seconds. Let's move on. Here's some new centaurs. They actually look like centaurs now, which is cool. Centaur fighters, these ones are. As I say, there are many different kinds of centaurs, so we're not going to go through all of them. These ones are just the lower end, cheaper melee ones. Very quick on their feet at 100 speed, so good flanking cavalry, good for harassing those backlines, hammer and anviling where they can. Then here's a higher end centaur unit, the Centaur Lancers. These are much heavier, harder hitting, big damage, big charge bonus. Not quite as fast, but still very fast. More armor as well. Can be in a wedge formation too. So there have been some changes to some of these units as well. They're not all just the same as they were before. There have been some slight ability adjustments to some units. But yeah, all these centaur units looking pretty nice now. Actual centaurs rather than just men on horses, which is just a normal cavalry. It's not even a centaur. Stupid old Troy. And then we have Giant Vanguard, who aren't too dissimilar to what they were before. They were giants before. They've had a little bit of a rework in the look. They kind of remind me of Thor from Kung Fury now, which is kind of hilarious. But they're pretty much the same unit. I think they have an extra ability, Children of Gaia, which gives them some regeneration, but they won't be able to move while that's happening. But otherwise, still the same unit. And here's Giant Champions, looking even more Thor. They're a big anti-large unit. Those big old armor-piercing hammers as well. So yeah, they just look a little bit more fantasy now, a bit more mythical looking. I think it's an improvement. Especially again with those snazzy snakeskin tights. Very, very nice. And to probably the coolest changing unit though, the Corebantes, Lionmen essentially. They kind of remind me of Skin Wolves from Warhammer, but they look pretty cool. They've got armor piercing damage, they've got bonus versus heroes, so they're good at killing heroes. Big damage dealer all round, lots of melee attack, pretty fast as well. Got some nice abilities. They've got a roar that can reduce enemy morale. They've got better vigor than most as well, so they don't get tired so easily. They've got flanking attacks improved, so they're great for flanking. They've got immunity to psychology, so yeah, a really cool unit and a nice addition. Probably my favorite unit of this DLC. Also though, a close second I think is the Spartoi. They look pretty damn cool. Stone statue warrior type dudes. They are an anti-large spearman unit. They've got great defensive stats, lots of melee defense, lots of morale, armor. But they actually don't rout and run away. They function like the undead do in Warhammer, where once they lose their morale, they start to crumble and lose health slowly over time. So they're basically unbreakable. They won't run away, but they will die over time if their morale does fall. They can heal themselves and resurrect models though, but they are at risk of going into rampage. So a pretty crazy unit all round. And then to the Cyclops, who is now actually a Cyclops and not just a man wearing a skull. Thanks Zeus. He's a big damage dealer, lots of bonus versus swordsman, bonus versus axeman, armor piercing, so big damage dealer, lots of melee attack. Going to be great at taking out all the enemy troops, anti-infantry to the core. He also has a damage boost ability, but does make him go berserk. He can still boulder toss. He's got a debuff to the enemy as well, still got fear too. So just a big damage dealer, anti-infantry single entity. And last but not least, the Minotaur, of course. Big damage dealer, armor piercing, lots of melee attack, kind of similar to the Cyclops, but more about killing heroes, I think. One of his abilities does come to that end, Gore, does do good single target damage. Also has a morale debuff ability, not to mention fear as well, so he can mess with morale aplenty. Still got Bull Rush as well, so pretty much the same type of deal as he was before. More about killing the heroes than infantry killing, but he can kill infantry plenty well enough. But the Cyclops might be the better choice if that's what you want. If you want hero killing, Minotaur could be your boy. So there we go, the new mythical units in the Mythos DLC for Total War Troy. How you feeling about it? I think most people would probably agree that original Troy is not that great, but this kinda saves it maybe a little bit and maybe piques some people's interest where they wouldn't have had any interest before. What do you reckon? I imagine my audience will be a little bit biased because they're mostly Warhammer boys, and if you're going to play fantasy, why not just play Warhammer, some proper fantasy, instead of this kind of half-baked fantasy, or at least it was half-baked. It's much better now for sure, but still, whether it's going to be worth it is up to you. Let me know what you think though, I'm curious to general consensus. I hope you enjoyed this, thanks for watching. I'll leave you on me scrolling through all the units, so if you want to pause that at any point and look through all the abilities for anything specific, go nuts. Thanks for watching, see you in the future.